friends, Grand Rising, Kimberly Denise here. Give me just a moment. I am trying to fix everything because as I set this up, it looked totally different. I'm streaming on my iPad and now it looks, okay, hopefully you guys can just see me okay. I'm going to share this on one of my other pages, so just bear with me. But welcome to the live. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Say hello, please. Don't be shy. Say hi. I'm so excited to have my live streaming back because I really have so many exciting things to talk to you guys about. Let me see here. Hold on. I'm going to share this to my other page. How do I do it? So today I'm going to be talking about 3 tips for shifting your body into regeneration. So if you're dealing with some health problems, you're dealing with illnesses or injuries or allergies, or you're getting sick all the time, you're having gut health problems, you're having issues with your health, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I'm going to share some valuable information that no matter who you are or what you're dealing with, these tips can help you, and I'm going to share it towards the end of the video. So make sure that you stay tuned. If you're too busy, hit the little, I think there's like 3 dots in the upper right hand corner, just save this video so you can come back to it at a later time. If you know someone who is struggling in their health, then please share this video with them too, because they're going to find it very valuable as well. So I realize a lot of you might not, hi kitty, my kitty might jump on me. Wow, I'm doing this, so just bear with me if that happens. I realize a lot of you might not know who I am, so let me introduce myself for those of you who are just meeting me or we're just connecting. Like I said, my name is Kimberly Denise, and I'm a spiritual life and business coach. My husband, Shawal, and I, we work with individuals to help them heal their body and their mind and their soul, utilizing psychedelics and superfoods. Now, not always combined together. Sometimes just psychedelics, sometimes just superfoods. But I can tell you that when we combine them together, it's very, very potent and powerful, right? So today, or you know what? Let me back up just a little bit. I'm going to tell you how I got involved in the area of health and healing and holistic health and holistic healing. And if you're into this area too, which I know a lot of my friends are because you guys are awesome, let me know down below in the comments, how did you discover, what was the first rabbit hole that you discovered? Was it the V word? Was it the stuff that they're spraying in the sky? What was it that motivated you to start learning more about your health? For me, I discovered the holistic health space when I was about, hold on, I gotta like minimize this window because I'm seeing myself in delay over here on the side. It's a little bit distracting. Okay, cool. There we go. So I discovered holistic health when I was about, it was probably right around 18. My mom passed away when I was 17, and my whole entire childhood was just so chaotic and so stressful and just filled with her health issues and her having health issues. So she was a single mother. And she was a drug addict and alcoholic her entire life. She had me when she was 38. And so by the time I came onto the scene, she had already been spending a lot of years abusing her body. And, fast forward a little bit, she eventually did go to a rehab and was able to rehab herself from meth and from alcohol. But she ended up getting on all kinds of pharmaceutical medications, which if you're familiar with things that are muscle relaxers and painkillers and just all these different types of things, she got a new addiction. And so she found herself addicted to all the psychiatric medication that she was on and the painkillers that she was on and all of the pharmaceuticals that she was on. So she traded one addiction for another addiction, which was just as bad, if not worse, right? They're all harmful to the body. They're all toxic to the body, right? And they're all highly addictive, right? So I dealt with that growing up, seeing her just being addicted to these substances, seeing her go through all of the side effects and all the things that you deal with when you're addicted to these things, right? I experienced her, let's see, Kimberly Hasey says kids and the V word, which I won't say on here, but I see you. I also read a book on natural cures they won't want you to know about. I did too, Kevin Trudeau, right? It was that one for me, but my very first one was by Jordan Rubin. It was called The Great Physician's Prescription for Health and Wellness. And my brain just exploded when I read that book. I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? So fast forward, right? She ended up passing away when I was 17 from many different complications. But I remember growing up and I was like, this can't be the way that you're supposed to live, just constant. I'm talking about like always having to go to the doctor, always getting a new prescription, always going to the hospital. One of the darkest and most scariest times when I was a child was she ended up having this it was called a TIA, it was called a stroke. It was like not a full stroke, but it was like a half stroke or a mini stroke. I don't really know how to explain it. But she ended up having a stroke and I found her unconscious. And when I tried tried to wake her up. Like, she didn't know who I was. She was like, didn't know who she was, where she was, or anything like that. And at the time, I think I was probably like 9 or 10. And I remember just being so scared, like, oh my God, like my mom doesn't remember anything. And I just remember, like, I don't know how I knew to do this with her, but I kept telling her, I was like, your name is this, and I'm this, and here's where we live. And I was just helping her remember all these different things so that she could recall, like, who she was and what was going on, right? So she ended up going to the hospital, and it was just time after time after time after time. And I remember just thinking, like, this is not the way that people are supposed to live, right? This is not normal. This is not okay. And I remember, like, she had a basket full of pill bottles that she would take, you know, and I'm just like, you know, this is not it, right? So I think in my subconscious mind, the takeaway that I took from that was like, I'm not going to live this way, and I'm going to commit to myself to figure out how I can live a stronger, better way for my children when I eventually have them, right? Hello, Stephanie. Don't be shy. Say hello as you guys tune in, even if you're tuning in at a later time. So when I was 18, a guy that I was dating at the time, his grandmother and his mom shared the book with me that I mentioned, the Great Physician's Prescription for Health and Wellness. And Jordan Rubin, he healed himself of Crohn's disease and a bunch of other things that he was dealing with in his gut health and his digestion and all this stuff. So I read through that book, and I was like, wow, this guy, you know, he went from being like emaciated and just like basically on the brink of death to changing his diet completely and consuming these soil-based organisms and doing this movement activity, and he healed himself. And then that was the first story that I heard, and that was like the first example that I heard of, like, wow, like you can actually reverse what happens to you. You know, up until that point, I knew it wasn't normal when I was a child. I knew it wasn't normal for people to like be sick like that and just, you know, always dealing with all kinds of medical issues. But at the same time, I didn't know, you know, the internet was coming up, but we didn't have social media back then. This was like 2005. The internet was there, but I didn't know how to research or anything like that. And it never once crossed my mind, and nor did anyone ever tell me or her or suggest or anything like that, hey, you know, like maybe nutrition could be something that can help, or, you know, diet or any type of herbs, or like there was never any type of natural suggestion to her and for her, right? So when I started learning all this, I was like, wow, this is incredible information. Hello, Con. I hope you're having an amazing day. I was like, wow, this is an amazing amount of information that I was learning. And I just remember thinking, and I was like kind of sad and depressed at first. I was like, dang, if I would have had this information when my mom was alive. And I still feel like that today. Like, if I knew back then what I know now, then maybe she wouldn't be gone. You know, maybe I could have helped her. Hey, Stephanie, appreciate you for tuning in. Maybe I could have helped her, right? So, you know, I lost both my parents to natural causes, and it sucks when you come to know all this knowledge and you learn about all these things, and you have family around you that's sick and suffering or passes away, you know, or you have friends, or you have whatever happened in the past, and you're like, wow, if I only knew this back then maybe I could have helped them, right? So that's what really drives me. That's what gets me up in the day and inspires me to share this information, is because I know that if I can share one thing that someone tells their grandma or tells their aunt or their cousin or somebody or just anything, you know, even if it's just one person, that is going to be able to impact their life, and it's going to be able to maybe even save their life, you know what I mean? Hey, Con. So that's what motivates me. That's what drives me, you know, that a lot of times we think like our the things that we do, or like the content we create, or the stuff that we share on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, or wherever, we think that, you know, it's insignificant, but really, even if one life is impacted, it's super important, right? So that's my story. That's how I discovered holistic health and wellness. So I just kept going, right? I kept going down the rabbit hole. I started learning about the V word, you know, when I started having babies, and I started learning about just the diet, and then I started, you know, fast forward several years, I started learning about plant-based living, and I went back and forth, and like first I was a vegetarian, and then I went back, and then I became a vegan for like a couple of years, and then I went back, and then now I became a vegan again last year in the summer, and this is, I know, my last and final time of being fully plant-based, just because of what it's doing for me, what it's done for my health, what I see in the communities that I'm a part of, doing it the right way, right? Because there's a lot of wrong ways to do a vegan lifestyle, or let me just say plant-based diet, whole foods plant-based diet. A lot of times people go vegan or they go plant-based and they don't do it right. They eat only processed foods, and then they get worse, or it's just exacerbated whatever they're dealing with, right? Hey, Sarah. So before I go into the 3 tips, stop attacking me, please. My cat's attacking me. Sorry about that. I wanted to read a piece of this book. So one of my business partners, his name is David Sandoval, he wrote this book. It's called The Green Foods Bible. Could green plants hold the key to our survival? And it's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. You can find it on Amazon. But I wanted to read a couple of pages, actually just one and a half pages for you guys, because this is really important information, especially if you know anyone that's dealing with cancer, or if you've ever dealt with that in your family, or if it, I don't believe things run in our family. I believe that behaviors run in our family. I believe that lifestyles run in our family. But as far as like diseases and sicknesses and illnesses and all these kinds of things, the genes of those things do not have to be turned on if you have the right lifestyle and you have the right diet and you have the right things that you're putting into your mind and into your body. Hey, I know how the attacking cat is. Yeah, she's over here like clawing at my seat underneath it. So, okay, this is a little sub-chapter. It's called Cereal Grass, DNA, and Cancer. It says, in the modern world, excuse me, we are constantly bombarded with carcinogens, radiation from many sources. The body is under assault, and although we may not feel the cumulative effects of this day-to-day toxic warfare, it takes its toll on our bodies a few cells at a time. Over the years, this could predispose us to developing any number of common chronic diseases, most notably and frighteningly, one of dozens of forms of cancer. Current statistics show that 1 of every 2 men is likely to have some form of cancer in his lifetime, and that women have only a slightly better chance of escaping a cancer diagnosis. Their odds are 1 in 3, which I found that pretty crazy. I guess I didn't realize that 1 in 2 men, so if you're a man on here, and there's 2 men on here, one of y'all could possibly have cancer, right? Unless you do something about it now. And then 1 of 3 of us women are not, could be susceptible, based on whatever the toxicity of our body is. Hey, better not knock down my light. Sorry about that. So many experts are convinced that the cancer epidemic is directly attributable to a combination of 2 factors. Number 1, an overabundant and nutrient-poor diet. And 2, a day-to-day exposure to synthetic chemical toxins used in or created as waste by industry, or those commonly found in building materials, new mattresses and carpets, plastics, paint, glue, solvents, car exhaust, incinerated waste, cleaning supplies, and even children's toys. The second factor creates damage at the very heart of our cells, the DNA that codes for each healthy cell. The first factor deprives our bodies of its natural defenses against this damage. The initial event of carcinogenesis is a change in cellular DNA that causes the cell to become undifferentiated, unable to do its unique job in the body. These cells then cannot work as a part of a tissue or organ system, and instead they take up space, multiplying and growing. Cancer cells do not have the natural clock that causes healthy cells to eventually self-destruct, a phenomenon known as apoptosis. So these cells that are not of any use to the body grow rapidly and use up the body's energy supply without doing any work. According to the current research, the concentrated nutrition found in cereal grasses could well repair that DNA damage before it gets out of hand. Studies on barley grass are especially promising. Barley grass is taken from young barley plants. This superfood, along with wheatgrass, has been widely sold as a nutritional supplement since before World War II. Barley grass has been especially popular and intensively researched in Japan in recent decades. Okay, then it goes into a study. Let's see. Hold on here. Yeah, let me read this part too. Biologist Jaso Hota, I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, working at the University of Southern California at La Jolla, set out to research the reparative effects of powdered barley grass juice on damaged DNA, the genetic material that creates the blueprints from which nearly all body cells are made. Damage to DNA by carcinogens is a major route through which chemical toxins push the shift of cells from healthy to cancerous, and Hoda's studies were based on the foundation of many others that had shown the promise of green food in repairing this kind of damage. Dr. Hoda and co-workers added powdered barley grass to cells with damaged DNA. The DNA of those cells repaired itself at twice the speed of cells that were left to their own devices. In another experiment, they exposed cells isolated in a test tube to a carcinogen and radiation at the same time. Barley grass juice was added to some... Wow, Katie. Sorry about that. Barley grass juice was added to some of the cell cultures, and those cells repaired themselves at least 3 times faster than the cells without the green juice, okay? And then there's one more little area. It talks a little bit more about dehydrated grasses, because up until recently, I didn't really know too much about these specific foods. I've tried growing wheatgrass juice. Let me know if you've tried wheatgrass in the comments below, or let me know if you've ever tried growing it before, or let me know if you've ever drank it. I've had it from juice places before, and you know, it's very potent and very strong, and I always felt like, yes, like I feel very healthy if I drink this. And I tried to grow it, and it grew, and you know, I was putting it in smoothies and stuff like that, but then I was dealing with like mold issues and mildew, and just it was a little bit challenging to grow myself. Let's see, Kimberly says, I read the ingredients of everything that goes in and on mine. Amazing. Yeah, that is a habit. That's one of the first things that you can start doing, is not only reading the ingredients, but know what to look for too. Know, when I look at this list, what is it that I'm supposed to be avoiding, and what is it that I'm supposed to be looking for? Kelly says alfalfa is superior to wheatgrass. Nice. Okay, that's interesting. I think he mentions that in here too. Thank you for letting us know. So let me see over here. Dehydrated grasses. Okay, cereal grass juices that are dehydrated at low temperatures can preserve all of the plant's nutrients and enzymes. If you choose, hey, if you have any like articles or any information, feel free to drop that below if you have info on the alfalfa, because I'm sure people would love to read about that. If you choose a dehydrated cereal grass over fresh, ensure that it is processed at a low temperature, 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and not pasteurized, and that it is processed within a few hours of being cut. Dehydrated wheat and barley grass juices are good choices and can be complemented with the juice of kamut leaves. All these plants are slightly different in their nutritional composition. Find the ones that work best for you by refreshing your cells with a variety of green foods. You can go for a lifetime without ever diminishing. And then it talks about this guy named Matt Goodman. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He had like all the most horrible symptoms that you can think of, right? And he experimented with supplements and foods with special healing benefits. He soon began to recognize that MS hadn't attacked him out of the blue, but that was his body's reaction to foods and lifestyle that went against the natural order of things. Fasting, yoga, meditation, raw foods, and massage were all aspects of his healing plan for his healing plan of moving back into the direction of health. He also used products that Dave designed, including green, kamut, spirulina, and activated barley. So he was able to reverse that. That's not the first time that I've heard somebody reverse multiple sclerosis. So I just want to highlight here that, you know, one of the things that I've discovered over the past, really just the past like 3 or so years, is that I've been involved in communities where people are doing this, and it's happening every day. And it's not on the news, because why? Of course, they're not going to put it on the news. Like, 3 people from Philadelphia, you know, reversed their cancer or whatever. They're not going to tell us that these things are happening, right? But they're happening. And how do you find out that they're happening? You get into the communities where they're happening. You plug into communities where people are focused on their health, they're focused on these types of protocols, they're focused on learning and education and real health care, right? Not disease care or sick care that we're actually dealing with our you know, the MDs and the doctors, and, you know, bless them, you know, some are very good, you know, or few are very good, I'm going to say, but for the most part, we all know that they're just salespeople for the pharmaceutical industry, right? They just want to roll as many people through their office as they can, write them a prescription and get them going, and just keep the cycle going so that way they can make as much money as possible, right? And guess what? They don't make money unless there's a office full of people, right? I remember it when I was growing up with my mom. You know, we'd go to a doctor visit, and there would be literally like 20 people in there, everybody sitting next to each other, piled in there, and it would take like an hour or 2 hours to even see the doctor. He would see her for maybe like 5 minutes. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Write out a new thing, and then there you go. That was it. You know, it's never, what's your diet like? Or what's this? Or how's your mental health? How's your mentality? Like, no kind of questions, nothing like that. So I've experienced what it is. But people are reversing their disease. People are reversing their illness. A great community to tap into is the community of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and tap into the work he has literally, if you go type in Dr. Joe Dispenza right now on YouTube, and you go to his YouTube channel, he has probably thousands, definitely hundreds. I don't know if it's thousands, but it's a lot. If you go and it's like, you expect to see like his meditations or interviews, no. His channel is filled with, hey, can you guys open the door for Luna, please? Can you open the door for Luna, please? His YouTube channel is filled with testimonials of people who have reversed their illness and their disease, not through diet, not through any type of natural healing remedy, through meditation alone. Meditation alone. And his work and his studies, I'm in the middle of his book called Becoming Supernatural right now. They have studies that show that advanced meditators, people who do the types of meditation that he teaches in his classes and in his retreats and through his work, advanced meditators, they have the proof that the blood of advanced meditators, it shows the markers that they are more or they're less susceptible to any and all viruses, illnesses, diseases, just anything. Because when you meditate, it does something. It changes your biology. And we were never taught this. We were never shown this. This isn't something that's commonly taught and shown and spoke about or anything like that. In fact, meditation, I don't know about you, but for me, all my life, meditation was shunned. Meditation was, oh no, that's something you shouldn't do, or stay away from that weird new age stuff. You shouldn't meditate. You shouldn't sit quietly and try to change your brain waves or anything like that. That's of the devil or something like that, right? But now we're finding that, no, wait a minute, our body, our biology, like we have a physical body, and we're not the body, but we're consciousness in the body. Like I'm not this body, but I have this body. You know, this is not Kimberly. Kimberly's inside, right? You are not your body. You are the consciousness and the soul and the spirit inside of your body, right? And we use these bodies. It's a vehicle as we're here in the earth plane, while we're in this life, right, in this 3D realm. We're using our bodies to go places and do things and all this kind of stuff. It's really like it's a biological vehicle. But what we're discovering is that things like meditation, but also nutrition, also the things that we're putting into our mind and things that we're focusing on and our thoughts and so our mental health goes hand in hand with our physical health as well. We're discovering that there's all these ways. The whole point is that you can reverse. And FDA disclaimer or whatever, we don't claim to heal or treat or reverse any type of illness or blah, 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 or whatever they want us to say, right? But the truth of the matter is people are reversing their illnesses that their doctor said, sorry, you have this, and now you have to deal with it the rest of your life, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza, himself, has one of the most inspiring, when I heard my mouth was just dropped open the entire time when I first heard him speak. It had to have been back in like 2014, 2015 or something like that, but he stood there on a stage and told his story about how he was riding a bike. He was in like a triathlon or a marathon or something like that. He was riding his bike down the highway somewhere in San Diego or something like that. And there was a police officer directing traffic, and he was riding his bike down. He came to an intersection. The policeman said, go ahead and go. And as soon as he went, someone blew the light or blew the intersection or whatever in a big truck or something like that and T-boned his bike. And he flew off of the bike, and he landed like this, like I guess, like on his butt, but it compressed so much that he had like so many broken vertebrae and shattered this and broken that and all this stuff. And he was in the hospital, and the doctor's sitting there like telling you the only option is surgery. You're probably never going to walk again unless you have a surgery. You're going to need a rod up your spine. You're going to need this and that. And he told him all these kind of things that he should not probably ever walk again, right? And he sat there, and I don't really know what his background was before, but something told him inside that the surgery isn't the only option. There was lots of risks to the surgery too. Back surgery is one of the most risky surgeries that you can have. I mean, there's so many delicate, intricate things. You need to really make a good, solid decision if you choose to have a back surgery, right? And they're not always guaranteed too. You can have a surgery, you can get worse. You can have a surgery, you can have an injury during the surgery. So he ultimately decided not to have the surgery. And he went and he disciplined himself. It took him like 3 or 4 months of spending like 4 or 6 hours a day in meditation, of going within himself and visualizing I believe he was a chiropractor before he started his work actually. So he knew like the anatomy of the spine. He probably understood, he probably had models, he probably had different diagrams and books and things like that. So he could, when he closed his eyes, he could see what a regular spine would look like, where the nerves were and everything. So he spent all that time reconstructing his spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, right? Discs and nerves and everything. 4 months later, he's walking like nothing ever happened again. But how does that happen, right? How do you have someone like that do something like that? And we kind of just write it off like, oh, I don't know, like the cognitive dissonance of the masses of most people just writes it off and thinks like, oh, I don't really know if I believe that. But if you stop to really think and ask yourself, and then you like go to one of his events, I haven't been to one of his live events, though I plan to in 2023. But if you watch the footage, or you just go to the channel and watch the the testimonials of the people that, there's all kinds of things that they're reversing. They're walking. There's people that roll in there in a wheelchair and with a walker or a cane, or they have a disability. There have been people who are blind going to the blind, like really, like they can't see, literally, not just legally blind, but like they're blind, and their sight is either restored or begins to be restored. So we're beginning to discover that there's something powerful that happens, not just within the body, but within the mind and within the consciousness and within the energy of us. When we get tapped into a certain energy, a certain frequency, we can control and we can direct the consciousness within our body to heal our body. Now, I'm not going to go in more deeply on that subject. I find it extremely, extremely motivating and inspiring that this is possible, because I see people all the time. You probably see people all the time. Maybe you're dealing with something personally yourself. Maybe you know family that are dealing with health problems, and just being in these communities where you're like, wait, no, I'm a part of this community. And, you know, unfortunately, you try to tell people sometimes, you're like, you know, you can heal that, you know, that you can reverse this, or, you know, you can at least, the first step is belief, right? If you can't get past the level of belief where you believe it's possible, then it doesn't matter what protocol or diet, it doesn't matter what thing you do or what meditation, you have to get to that place of belief where you're like, I'm ready to surrender, I'm ready to let go, I'm ready to surrender to something bigger than myself, something that I've never known or heard before, that maybe I've been skeptical of in the past, but I'm ready to just let go and allow this miracle to take place, right? And we pray for healing in church. You know, I remember growing up, and, you know, the people at church would always pray over my mom. They would always pray that she would be healed, and pray that this and pray that that. And it's almost like, you know, in church we're taught that, like, you know, the prayer is some magical thing that's supposed to take place, which of course those things happen too, right? But it's like, the answer to the prayer sometimes comes along in the way that we don't expect. You know, maybe, what if it's not an instantaneous miracle, but it's someone comes along the way and says, hey, you know, I have a suggestion for you, or hey, did you know, have you ever thought about trying this specific thing? Like, it's like the whole metaphor of the guy on the roof where there was a flood, and he was like waiting for a boat to come, or he was praying to God that someone would come and save him, right? And somebody rolled by on one thing, and somebody came by on another thing. He's like, no, I'm waiting for God. And then another came by, and then like the flood kept going and going and going until he like drowned or whatever. I don't remember exactly how the story goes, but you probably heard it, right? It's like the form that God provided for him to be saved out of that situation didn't match what he thought it should, so he never saw it. He never recognized it. And that's what we do when we're praying for healing, or we're looking for a way to solve one of our problems, whether it's health or otherwise. Sometimes if we're not open to what the solution might be, and usually the solution is we have to change something within ourselves, we have to change something within our lifestyle, we have to become a different person, which is uncomfortable for us. We don't really want to do that, you know, all the time. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it feels dangerous, sometimes it feels, most of the time, it feels uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Making new changes. Change, just as human beings, is just uncomfortable. Then we don't see what the actual solution and the answer to the prayer is, right? So so the 3 tips, let me get to that. So if you wanted to write it down, so the first is detoxification, right? So we all know, drop, if you're tuned into this, or if you're tuned in at a later time, just drop something below. Drop one way below that we're getting poisoned by the powers that be right now. You know, we've got so many different ways. We've got the food supply, you know, the endless chemicals, the glyphosate, everything that's in the food, chemical additives, food coloring additives, MSG, there's just so much stuff in the food, right? And then you got the water, you have fluoride that's added to the water, you have the chlorine, you have all these different things that are added to the water, and trace things that are in the water. Then you have the chemtrails in the sky, and, you know, so many people have different ideas on what that is, and, you know, people have found that there's aluminum, and there's barium, and there's just all these different heavy metals that are literally just falling down and just falling on us, and we're breathing it in. And, you know, like the book said, you know, there's all different things around our house. If we look around, there's might be things in the paint, there might be things in our bed, there might be things in our air that's just floating around. There's just everywhere we look and turn, we go into our environment, and we're being bombarded with not only things in our natural environment, right, that would be like toxins, but also all these man-made chemical things that are also bombarding us, right? So if we're constantly eating, we're constantly breathing, yes, Kelly says 5G. Okay, cool, Kimberly, I'm gonna look into that too. Yeah, so you get the radiation from here, you know, if you're microwaving your food, you have that issue. There's just everything everywhere, right? So think about it, like, you're just bombarding and consuming and eating and breathing and drinking and eating and breathing and drinking. And if we're constantly eating and breathing and drinking things that are attacking our cells, and our cells are just trying to fight the whole time, and they're really just trying to, like, you know, like if you imagine like a little samurai or something like that, they're just sitting there like, just trying to chop away everything and trying to fight it all off, and they're constantly doing that. Eventually, there's going to be so much stress in the body that the body starts to say, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. It's just too much. Like, we are magical creations and beings, but sometimes our body burden is what I've heard a lot of people call it. It just becomes too much. And our cells that are fighting for us, you know, they're not strong enough to fight us, or we're not giving ourselves, we're not giving our body what it needs to, like, get stronger. You know, if we have an army you know, and our army is going to fight some kind of a battle, right, that's protecting our land or whatever like that. We're going to make sure they're equipped with everything they need to go and fight that battle, right? And it's the same thing within our body. You know, we have our cells, our immune system. We have all these different things that were built-in healing mechanisms, right? But they do require some help. They require some things from us, right? Usually from our diet, usually from things that we intake or supplements and things that we can put into our body that are from nature, from the earth, and that can work with our body to help fortify our body, help make our body, the job that our body does, just easier, right? Kimberly says they have found that Red 40 creates ADHD in kids. Yes, I've been reading about that recently, actually, with the you know, there's an Adderall shortage going on, and I know a lot of kids are prescribed that, and it's like, if you look at the food, like if you just start there, so right, so the first tip is detoxification, right? Start learning about and asking. You know, if you don't have time to study, you don't have time to research, there's many experts, there's lots of people that you can reach out to, there's coaches, there's programs, you know, there's information that you can do, right? You have to find the time to figure out, what can I do to support my body's detoxification so I can get some of this out of there, so I can help my body fight this off, I can help my body do what it needs to do, what it's designed naturally to do, right? And then secondly, in this kind of goes in conjunction with the detoxification, but like the diet. So we have to look and be like, okay, what is it that I've brought myself to this place where I just got diagnosed with this, or I'm coming down with that, or I'm always having a rash, or I'm always, you know, for me, now it's been like a year and a half. For the past two, it hasn't happened since for a pure year and a half now. But I was dealing with all kinds of like random like rashes that were happening. Like I would get a rash on my leg, and it was like really bad, where like I would have like an open sore type of a rash, and it just happened out of nowhere. And then one day I got a rash just all right here, and like it was so horrible. I remember you can even ask Joelle, I was in the bathroom screaming because it just hurt so bad. And I'm like, why am I dealing with this? I'm just having these like random. And then I picked up the book Eat Dirt from Josh Axe? I think Dr. Josh Axe. Sorry if I messed that up. But I started to learn about gut health, and I started to learn about how like one of the major things that we can do is really learn how to not only detoxify our body, but fortify our body. And that, like, you know, our gut, it has microbiome. It has these good, positive bacteria that are in there that are there to help us, helps our immune system, helps our mental health, helps so many things in our body. All of our health goes right back to it, can start and stem. People will tell you all of health starts in the gut, or all disease starts in the gut, either one. So if we address that, you know, what is it that we're intaking? What is it that so you can ask yourself, is a very easy question, right? As you go along your day, you know, as you're eating the foods that you're eating, or you're consuming whatever it is you're consuming, am I feeding myself? Am I fortifying the health? Am I actually nourishing myself, or am I nourishing disease? Because you're nourishing something. You're either nourishing your health, your vitality, your ability to regenerate, your ability to get healthier, your ability to just fight off whatever's happening in your body, or you're feeding the disease that's in your body. You're feeding your body's ability to become weaker to all these environmental toxins, all these things that are in the food, all this stuff that's happening, right? And we're just not. The biggest issue is that we're not taught all of this in school. We're not taught this is stuff that we have to go out and research out and self-educate on ourselves. Like maybe there was a nutrition class, but it was like, you know, here's the food pyramid and here's what you should eat, and there you go. And then we're like, okay, cool, McDonald's, bread, meat, cheese, we're solid, right? There's some vegetables on there, we go, you know? So we weren't really taught or told the right way of, you know, what does real nutrition look like? What are the macronutrients and the micronutrients and the phytonutrients, you know, how important plants are and all this kind of stuff. So really figuring out what are the things that I can start consuming to gather up these toxins and to get them out of my body. Because there's foods just like beans and green foods, and really finding a way to flood your body with green food, green juice. One of the I don't want to say simplest, but one of the ways that you can start detoxifying your body and detoxifying your gut and addressing the gut health is through a juice cleanse or juice fasting, which I discovered. I've juiced in the past, but I've never actually done a real juice fast until I discovered Shane Sterling from Raw Vegan Heroes. So I started finding his videos on YouTube, and I did my first 14-day straight juice fast, just juice, all day, every day for 14 days. I wanted to go 40 days. To get just everything out that I could get out, but I had to stop at day 14. I was losing too much weight. I was probably making some mistakes there. Maybe I wasn't getting enough calories with the juice or whatever. But anyways, the 14 days was great. You know, my energy had never been higher. I really enjoyed I felt the nutrition. I felt the nutrients. But, so that's one of the ways that you can do juice fast, whether it's even just a day. You start out just once a week. I'm going to do juice fast. You can do a 3-day juice fast. But juice, what happens with juice is that allows your body to stop digesting food for a little bit. Because when I started my juice fast, I thought back, I was like, wow, you know, our body is digesting food all the time. And if our body's digesting food all the time, it's using up energy to digest that food all the time. And it's using a lot of energy to digest that food. And if it's constantly having to use all that energy to digest the food, guess what it doesn't have energy for healing, right? And I was like, I've never done any type of fasting or juice fasting up until now. This was the summer. And I was like, my body's literally been digesting food for 34 years. 34 years. My body's just been like digesting. Never had a break, right? So that's one of the great benefits of fasting, and juice fasting specifically, is because it takes the fiber out. You're able to just really your body goes into this other state of where it's able to clean out. And what happens is you start to let go of a lot of stuff that's stuck in your gut. So it's like a popular saying in the health world that most people right now, those of you that are sitting here, I don't know who you are or what your health is like or anything like that, but the average person walks around with 5 to 10 pounds of just fecal waste in their gut, in their bowels, in their intestines, just stuff that's stuck, lodged, sitting there, like meals that you had, whoever knows how long, is stuck, lodged, and it's just in there, right? And so what happens when that's stuck in there and gets built up is a couple of things. Like, first of all, we become toxic because the toxins that are formulated from that happening start to get into our bloodstream. A lot of times that's what causes rashes and psoriasis and eczema and just all these different things, because all these things that don't belong in our blood are now leaching through the lining of the gut walls, getting into our blood, and then causing us to feel fatigue and causing us to have all these different maybe autoimmune conditions and symptoms and things like that, right? So not only that, but when our gut is backed up, or we're constipated, or we're not digesting properly, or we're just filled up with all of this junk and all this waste, our body does not absorb the nutrients that we're even eating. So even if we're trying to eat organic, we're trying to eat healthy, we're trying to load ourselves up with vegetables, we're just not absorbing very much of the nutrients because it goes through and it's like there's a coating. Like, have you ever seen, this is so gross, have you ever seen like the pipes of like an old house, like water pipes? It's actually pretty gross. If you go Google water pipes, dirty water pipes or something like that, it's literally like pipes, and they're just caked with layers of, sediment, minerals, and whatever. But that's what happens to us if we don't cleanse ourselves out. We don't do things to clear stuff out. Stephanie says, I'm still cleaning my body and detoxing after 200 days of juice cleansing. Wow, oh my gosh. 200 days, straight. That is, wow. I commend you for that. My 14 days was very intense for me. It's definitely, you have a spiritual experience when you start juice fasting. You have ego death when you start juice fasting. You come up against all of I learned so much about my relationship with food. I learned about how addicted to food I was, how addicted to some foods that I was a lot. You learn a lot, right? So detoxification, gut health, juice fasting, cleaning out the pipes and the area of where because the nutrients are absorbed in our gut. That's where the nutrients, the food is broken down. The microbiome, by the way, breaks down the food for us, and that's why it's so important to eat things that are fiber filled and a lot of plant material, because that's what they like to eat. The processed food, the white flours and sugar and just all these processed things and chemicals and stuff like that, that food is what the bad bacteria likes to eat. Parasites and all this different stuff. So that's why I said either with one group you're feeding your healing, you're feeding your body, you're fueling your body's ability to heal, or you're fueling your body to be developing disease, because you're feeding someone literally living things that are in your body that are there to either help you or hurt you. You're feeding one group of them, right? So you want to really be feeding that group of ones that are there for you and to help you, right? And so, so if you're not cleaning it all out, then you're not really absorbing anything else, right? I should have wrote it down. I think was that the third one? Hold on. So, and then somebody mentioned, learning what ingredients to, learning to read ingredient lists, right? Learning what ingredients, what is it that I should even be avoiding? What is it that I should be looking for? What is it that I should be consuming, and what is it that I should be steering away from, right? So a couple of, processed food and fast food and all that stuff, we know that it's not the healthiest stuff for us, right? But a lot of us, we get addicted to it, and we get addicted to it. Why? Because the companies purposely design it for us to get addicted to, right? They're not in there thinking like, how can we make the healthiest hamburger or the healthiest chicken nuggets or the healthiest whatever it is that's on the menu of these places. They're not thinking about that. They're not thinking of anything to do with health. They're thinking of, how can I make this taste the best? How can we add these little chemicals or whatever it is, so when it hits your mouth, you get that dopamine rush, and you just feel like, oh my God, this is so good. And then you get, like, what I learned through my juice fast is that when I would eat certain foods, I would like get high off the food. And we would literally get high off food. Like, food is a drug. If you didn't know it, now you know. Food is a drug, doesn't matter what it is. Processed food, things like sugar and stuff like that, which I was able to, thankfully, I'm very grateful, I was able to let go of a lifelong addiction to sugar. Last year, I just cut it off because when I was having those rashes and stuff, I was like, it has to be that it's to do with the sugar issue that I have. Because I was health conscious, and I was trying to do my best, trying to eat the best and trying to eat all these healthy foods and stuff like that, but I still had that little problem that was passed down to me. And again, it's not that it was passed down to me because it ran in my family or anything like that. It was just the lifestyle and the behavior was passed down. That, it's okay to always have cookies in your house. Always have cookies and have it every day, as long as it's just a little bit. It's always normal to have a candy jar and just eat some each and every day or every other day or whatever it is. It's just that we normalize our unhealthy habits, and so many people collectively normalize them that we think it's just the normal way to eat. Like, this is just normal food and normal. But when we really start to learn about what is actual food, then we look at what's actually, like, what's served at schools and what's actually widely available to the world and to the population. Then we discover that, what's actually being offered to us isn't even food. It just looks like it, and we're being told that it's food, but it's actually not even food. Our body doesn't recognize it as food. In fact, a lot of the food that we eat, our body has a reaction, like an immune reaction, as if we're eating something that's like a poison. That's what's happening, A lot of these immune conditions, autoimmune conditions, and then these immune system conditions that people get, it's because a lot of the food and a lot of the things that are in the food, like, there's glyphosate on all of our food, unless it's completely organic, and even some organic is getting tainted with it, right? But, like, everything is sprayed with this stuff. It's everywhere in the parks. It's anywhere that you see grass. It's anywhere. It's all over people's lawns and yards and everything like that. And it's flying through the air probably if you live in a neighborhood that's full of grass or grass yards. Yeah, food-like product, right? So we're eating food, and we're thinking that we're eating healthy or whatever, but we're consuming all these chemicals. And then our body's like, man, turn it up, turn up the immune reaction, because there's something coming in. We're thinking that we're just eating food, but the body thinks that we're consuming some kind of poison, and our body just, it starts to break down. It starts to go crazy. So the point of this live was to share that, like, no matter what it is, like, here's what I believe. I believe no matter what you're struggling with, that you can reverse it. And it starts in your mind, starts with you believing that it's possible. And then the first step that you have to take is put yourself into communities where this is happening. Put yourself into, there's communities on Facebook, there's communities all over the internet where you can become part of digital communities, maybe even physical communities if you can find people in your area that are dealing with these things, or listen to stories. The more stories that you listen to, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video or documentary or whatever, there's all kinds of documentaries you can start watching, but you have to start reconditioning your mind to believe that this is possible, because up until this point, we've been conditioned and programmed to believe that disease is normal. It's a normal part of aging. It's normal to struggle and just be sick every time. It's normal to be sick between the months of October and February because it's the whatever season, it's just normal for us all to come down with these things. But if you ask yourself, well, is it really normal? And then you go and look, is there anyone that doesn't get sick at these times? And then when you ask the new question, you find a new answer. Actually, no, there's lots of people. Me, myself, I haven't been sick with a cold or flu or anything like that. And this December, it's been 2 years. 2 years we got the stuff that was going around when that stuff was going around in 2020. And since then, I guess because of the things the changes that I've made in my diet, the changes that I've made mentally, the meditation practices that I've started to take on, the belief systems that I've been like programming myself and really just working on my mental discipline, and just all the things put together, I guess, has worked together. I'm kind of like my own experiment. I'm kind of figuring out, like, what is it that I've done? What is it that has really made me not come down with anything? And family too. You know, we have 3 small children in the house, Shawal. You know, I'm very grateful for that. And I look back and so I'm like, okay, how can I figure out how to make this better? How can I figure out how to share this with others? How can I figure out, I'm always trying to figure out, you know, going back to the beginning of the story, you know, I lost my mom when I was 17. She really, you know, she abused her body her whole life, but did she have to pass away yeah, she was like 54 when she passed away. Did she have to die? Probably not, you know. I had some of this information that I have now today, if I was able to share it with her and help her reverse some of the stuff that was going on, I think that would have been possible. So, you know, I'm all about living first the best healthy life that I can and helping my family live the best healthy life, but it goes beyond that, you know, right? Because we can all be healthy and we can just ride off into the sunset healthy and stuff like that, but it's like, well, what about the world around us, you know? Because we're all trying to create a community, we're trying to design a new earth, a new place to live, a new future, right? Like, what's the future? I ask myself this all the time as a parent. What is the future going to look like for our children? You know, our children that are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, or even teenagers. What is the future going to look like for them in 10, 20, 30 years if no significant changes are made and we just keep going down the trajectory that the big corporations want us to go in, right? I can't even imagine. Like, it makes me like, oh my God. It makes me feel angry. It makes me feel, put down below, like, how do you feel knowing that there's like literally conglomerates that like want you to be sick, they want you to suffer, they want you to be on their products, and they, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally that way. It's literally as if we're like in a sci-fi movie, right? We're in some kind of a movie script where there's like an evil person that's like, you know, but there's, you know, there's lots of people say that there's reasons for that, and there's other videos that we can talk about, you know, why is it that we have this enemy and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is that we are up against something, powers and beings and things and people, or I don't even know if you want to call it people, but anyways, there are forces, there we go, forces that would rather us not thrive, and rather us be sick, and rather us have disease, and rather us become customers and lifelong customers, and that's it. But anyways, I get very disturbed when I think about what does the future look like for our children if they just continue on going the rate that it's going right now. If the food supply doesn't improve, you know, the food supply today, this is one of the biggest things that I've learned in the past year or so, being like a holistic health advocate and things like that, is like, even if you're eating organic and you think that you're eating healthy food, the nutrients in the food is completely different than they were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, because of soil depletion, because of the things that are going on in the farming practices. Even in organic farming, the soil quality is not always the same, is not always great, right? And our food quality has everything to do with the soil quality and what's in the soil, and what are the the microbiome of the earth, really, is what soil is. But what are the microorganisms? There we go, that's the word I was looking for. The microorganisms that are present or not present in the soil of the earth when that food is growing. So like, an apple today is not equal to apple a decade ago, or 2 decades ago, or 3 decades ago. So when we think that we're eating organic, and we think that we're eating healthy, we're eating all this food, but we're not getting those real dense nutrients. We're not being able to flood ourselves with the all of the things that it actually really is like begging us for, right? And so if we don't figure out a new way of either doing farming or doing locally grown things, or growing our own food, or whatever the solution might be, and if you think that you have a solution, let me know what you think the solution is below. I have some ideas and things like that, and I'm a part of communities that have ideas and that are, you know, offering solutions and things like that. Bye, Stephanie. You have an amazing day. Hey, Naomi. So one of those could be, you know, we need to go back to locally. Like, let's stop this factory, huge production of food and stuff like that, because it's obviously not working too well. Let's go back to like supporting the local farms, really educating, making sure that our locally grown people, like, they know they're doing organic practices, and we're supporting them in that, and making sure they're able to fund that. And soil regeneration is another huge one. If you want to write down some notes, and then I'll end this off. A couple of really inspiring documentaries that you can go watch are Kiss the Earth, and what was the other one? Hold on, maybe I can look it up. There's some reason. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Hold on, what is that one called? Anyways, it talks about like the state of the soil. And they said, I mean, that was like 2 years ago that I saw that, but there's something like less than 60 harvests or years left before like we just can't grow food in the earth anymore. Like you would think that that would be on the news and that would just be like the number one thing that people are talking about. Like, how can we just solve this problem? Because guess what? In 60 years, let's see, I'll be 95, but my children will be, let's do the math here. In 60 years, my children will be like 63, 65, 67. So they'll be, you know, getting up there in years. But imagine that, like living on a planet where you can't grow food anymore in the earth. Like, is that why they're trying to make all this fake stuff? Is that why they're trying to... I'm going to drop it in the comments. I can't think of the other documentary, but these documentaries talk about the very real issue that is happening with the soil quality of the earth. And if we want to preserve the earth and save the earth, and it's not just like a hippie saying thing, it's like a real thing that's happening, is like the soil needs our help, the earth needs our help. And as we pay attention to and make the earth, taking care of the earth a priority, the earth is going to help us make ourselves a priority. Like, it's all a cycle of like getting back to nature, getting back to the earth has all the answers. The earth has all the supplies, it has all the medicine, it has all the things that we need to live a quality life, can be found growing in the ground, right? It can be cultivated to grow in the ground, right? And so making that a priority in our life however we can, starting small however we can, learning to read labels however we can, figuring out how to get nutrient dense, like I mentioned a little bit. If you need help figuring out, you know, what's the solution, then I'm eating organic. I feed my kids organic as much as I can, but if the nutrients aren't there, what are we supposed to do? You know, if you have questions on that, if you have questions on what are some of the improvements that you can make, or if you're somebody that's just brand new to this area and you're like, I have no idea, it's so overwhelming, I used to be that mom, right, where it's just so overwhelming, you're like, let me just go to the drive-thru, that's the easiest thing, I don't even know where to start, I don't even know like how to figure this out. You know, reach out, let me know, because I do have solutions. I'm a part of several communities. I can plug you into, if you need to start seeing testimonials of people that are healing themselves, I've got communities I can plug you into. If you want communities where people are transforming their bodies through dense nutrients and getting access to organic superfood nutrition without having to grow it themselves, I've got those communities too. So just reach out. My DM is always open for questions or conversations. I love connecting with everyone. So I'll drop that other documentary. I'll drop both of these documentaries and some notes here in the comments below, so that way you guys can go watch those. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm going to be doing more of these now that I got my live streaming back. I'm going to be doing more lives to share just more of this information, more of what really I'm just documenting the things that I'm learning, the things that I am implementing in my life, the things that are working, and that way you can go out and do it for yourself, implement it in your own life, and make yourself healthier and have more vitality in your life, and ultimately heal yourself, right? Because I believe that that's possible for you no matter what. So love you guys. I'll see you in the next live. Bye. Hope you have an amazing day.